House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
On this first day of spring, we hope, would you join me in prayer? We confess before our Creator that we Minnesotans believe we are above average. At least our children are, which must reflect upon us as parents as well. And yet we have suffered through these many months of below average temperatures. Even this first day of spring, we see snow still on the ground and ice on the curbs, and it does not feel like the above average state we know ourselves to be. Know, O God, that these past months have indeed humbled our hearts and shown us that we too have below average days. But with this confession, may our months of winter discontent be over, and may this vernal equinox turn our hearts to above average days ahead, not only in temperature, but in addressing the work that calls those in this house together this day. As the book of Proverbs instructs us, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. We pray for that spirit of wisdom and understanding in these precincts. Where there is building to be done, may the skills of this body, of legal drafting and of compromise crafting, be deployed to turn that vision into a practical plan. And may all this be done in the light of that spirit of counsel and wisdom whom we each know, the Spirit who has given us this day and for which we give thanks. Amen.
The chaplain for today is the Reverend Bill Dabney from Presbyterian Minister from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Please remain standing and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 88th Session, 2014, 72nd day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Wednesday, March 19th, 2014.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Reports of standing divisions, committees, and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading of House File 1984.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2142.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2148.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2165.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2192.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2236.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2295.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2311.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2318.
Second
Second
reading.
reading of House File 2372.
Second
Second
reading.
reading of House File 2413.
Second
Second
reading.
reading of House File 2447.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2531.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2617.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2654.
Second reading.
reading of House File 2656.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2684.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2687.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2798.
Second
Second
reading.
reading of House File 2829.
Second
Second
reading.
reading of House File 2835.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2884.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2924.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2948.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2949.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 2970.
Second reading.
Second reading of House File 3043.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The Chief Clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House File 3218 through 3250.
First reading, House Files 3218 through 3250. Do we have a report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration? We're right there. Yeah, I just turned off the mic. Which one? They're finding it.
I got it right here.
Okay. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, Murphy E. for the Committee on Rules. Pursuant to Rule 121, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for today for Monday, March 24th, 2014. Senate File Number 1952, House File Numbers 2091, 2385, 655.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions and non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there's no objection, we'll take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, those motions prevail.
This one right here, Atkins. What does he want to do? He wants to send it to taxes. She wants it to go to state government finance.
Well, they're on there, right? I don't have to change it.
Right, but
I'll put
we would have to act on.
Yep. Winkler moves that House File 605 be recalled from the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources Policy and re-referred to the Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Finance.
Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, easy for the Chief Clerk to say. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a consumer products bill, consumer products information bill. It's not really a natural resource or environment bill. I am asking that it be referred to the Natural Resource Finance Committee because there is some money related to the bill that Representative Wagenius has available. And I've spoken to both chairs and they both think that this is fine.
Representative Hackbarth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe Representative Winkler could explain a little bit about why this hasn't been heard in the Policy Committee. This bill has been introduced February of 2013, and it was out of its last committee. It went to three other committees, and March 13th of 2013 was the last one, and we've had all of this session. I'm not quite clear what's been happening here, Mr. Speaker. Could Representative Winkler explain that?
Representative Winkler will yield. Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The answer is pretty simple. I think Representative Dill didn't feel like this was in the purview of his committee, and so he wanted us to move it out.
Representative Hackbarth.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Winkler, I don't think that's quite the right answer. I'm not sure that Representative I'm sure if that was the case, Representative Dill would have done something else with it or moved it on himself somehow, or just. But this doesn't seem right, Mr. Speaker, that we've had all this session and now we're just passing over the policy committee on a policy bill and sending it to the finance committee. It's just absolutely not right.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. Motion prevails.
Atkins moves that House File 2463 be recalled from the Committee on Governmental Operations and re-referred to the Committee on Taxes.
Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is my motion. There was simply a clerical error in referring it to government operations. It was designed to go, or supposed to go to taxes, so that's my motion. And I've checked with the powers that be. They all are fine with that.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a motion to recall and re-refer, but the problem that I have with this, Representative Atkins, is that this bill needs to go to state government finance. I'm not sure why it was in the Committee on Government Operation. There seemed to be some disorganization on the part of leadership, but this bill really needs to go on the Committee on State Government Finance before it goes to taxes. We heard it in taxes today. I'm not really sure why we heard it in taxes when Government Operations has jurisdiction over it. That was kind of confusing, but where it really needs to go is State Government Finance because there's a fiscal cost to revenue and campaign finance.
Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Pepin, thank you for making that point. Actually, thank you, Representative Anderson, for asking the question. In taxes today, in the intervening time, I had a chance to call Mr. Goldsmith at the Campaign Finance Board, and I quote what he said at 1:30 this afternoon: "This is not new or extreme. It would be absorbed within the Campaign Finance Board budget." End quote. I then asked about whether it would have an impact if they made requests to the Department of Revenue. And I quote, he said, "We're already getting the return from the donor. It would be sworn to in a deposition. There would be no need to get it from the Revenue Department." End quote. So there is no impact as a result of the manner in which this would be investigated. And with that, I'd continue with my motion.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in support of Representative Pepin's motion that this bill should go to state government finance.
We're on the Atkins motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I oppose Representative Atkins' motion because this bill truly needs to go to the state government finance. In Tax Committee today, we talked about what are the financial implications of this bill, and there wasn't a whole lot of clear answers. When we talk to staff in the Tax Committee that don't have clear answers about what kind of impact this will have, and when I ask the Department of Revenue to come down and they don't have clear answers on what this means, I think that's a good reason of why a bill like this should go to the State Government Finance Committee. It's all well and good that you had those conversations, Representative Atkins, but all the members that serve in the State Government Finance Committee never had the chance to ask those questions, and they should. That's the whole reason that we have finance committees, to determine whether or not a bill like this will have a fiscal implication and have those kinds of conversations. So I actually, after the committee hearing, asked for fiscal staff to put in a fiscal note, because I think we need to have this issue analyzed and figure out what is this going to mean for the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota. And I think that's a small request to ask, that we follow the committee procedure and have a bill like this with a potential impact to our budget go through a finance committee.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I encourage everyone to vote against this motion. Mr. Goldsmith may have said it, but I'd really like to see the fiscal note that should be coming back to us shortly. And I just really feel strongly that when we have a bill, that it goes through the right process. We're all about process here, so we want to make sure that every committee that has jurisdiction over a bill gets an opportunity to see it. And if we don't do that, we're really shorting the taxpayer. So I encourage members to vote against the Atkins motion.
Representative Holbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, I'm glad that Representative Atkins, Anderson, and Pepin know what the bill is about, but when Representative Atkins made his motion, he failed to follow the custom and usage of the House and tell the body what the bill was about, and that certainly would be helpful for the rest of the body.
Representative Atkins.
And Mr. Speaker, Representative Holbrook, I thought I was following the custom and usage. Traditionally, when we have clerical errors, we literally just move it from one committee to another. What this would do, this bill, House File 2463, responds to a U.S. Supreme Court case involving Citizens United. It would enable corporations to continue to give political donations as required by Citizens United, but would treat those donations exactly like those provided by individuals, such that corporations would not be allowed to give them in pre-tax dollars. It would be the same as individuals who have to make their donations in post-tax dollars. Thank you, Representative Holberg, for asking the question.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wondering if the author, Representative Atkins, would yield.
He will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Atkins, I sat in the Tax Committee today, and I believe I heard the discussion that there was not a tax provision in the bill, and there was question as to whether it needed to come there anyway. And I don't have your motion in front of me, but I thought I heard that it was to refer it to the Tax Committee. Is that correct?
Representative Atkins.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Drazkowski, yes, you are correct. We had an opportunity to be heard in the Tax Committee today before they even took possession of it. Mr. Michaels, Joel Michaels, attested to the fact that there are actually no tax laws being changed. So we thought about just bringing it directly to the floor, since apparently it didn't actually need to go to taxes. But in light of the process issues, we wanted to make sure, and we checked with the Chief Clerk's staff. They said it was still most appropriate to send it formally to the Tax Committee, where it was originally referred to by the Elections Committee. Representative Chair Lincheski then would have an opportunity to take the bill up again and potentially pass it back to the floor on, I think, Wednesday perhaps would be the next time the opportunity would arise for you to take it up.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Atkins, for confirming that you heard what I did, and that is that there's not a reason for taxes to see this bill. I'd have raise a point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker, if I could.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is this motion amendable?
Representative Drazkowski, can you just tell me what the motion you want, what the amendment you want to make is?
Mr. Speaker, if it is amendable, I would like to strike taxes and insert state government finance.
And we have a motion that's pending right after this one that would send the motion to state government finance. So, you know, if this motion goes down, that motion would come up. If that motion comes up, I mean, if that, so I think that it would be, if we could just take the motions in order, if you would be all right with that, I think that would be better.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I got a parliamentary inquiry in front of you. Is the motion amendable?
Representative Drazkowski, the motion is amendable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to amend the motion by striking taxes and inserting state government finance.
So it's a motion to amend the motion. Any discussion on that? Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If members, I encourage you to adopt this amendment. The motion itself sends the bill to the wrong committee, as stated by Mr. Michael in committee and understood there and acknowledged by the author earlier. So appreciate if we could send this to the proper committee and accomplish that by amending the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So the motion before us is to amend the motion to send the bill to state government instead of taxes. Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Drazkowski, I understand your desire, but for the reasons already stated that came from Mr. Goldsmith, that would not be the appropriate committee for it to go to. And again, members, it was a clerical error that was made in the Elections Committee. It's just a matter of process. We want to make sure that we send it to the committee that they intended to send it to. So for that, I'd appreciate a no vote on the motion to amend and a yes vote on my motion to send it where the Elections Committee wanted to send it, which is the Tax Committee. Thank you.
Representative Drazkowski.
I pass, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in favor of the Drazkowski motion. Representative Atkins has mentioned a few times that Mr. Goldsmith has said it's not necessary to go through elections, but I don't believe that Mr. Goldsmith speaks for the Department of Revenue, and I believe that there will be a cost there. So I would encourage members to support the Drazkowski motion.
Seeing no further discussion, we're on the amendment to amend the motion. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. Motion does not prevail.
Division, Mr. Speaker.
Ask for division. So all those who voted aye, please rise. You can sit down. The noes, please rise. There were 56 ayes and 65 nays. So the motion does not prevail. So we're on the Atkins motion. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none. Oh, Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask for a roll call.
Representative Atkins asked for a roll call. There being 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 74 ayes and 58 nays, the motion prevails.
Radenovich moves that House File 3237 be returned to its author.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay.
Right. So we can.
Should we just hold on? And it's actually not in proper form. It's not proper form.
Yeah, she can withdraw. Okay.
Hamilton moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended that House File 2408, now on the General Register, be given its third reading and be placed upon its final passage.
Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my motion. I move that we declare an urgency and suspend the House rules, take up for immediate consideration House File 2408, the bill that funds the 5% campaign, Mr. Speaker, and ask for a roll call.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you heard me speak about this yesterday. And you know what? This is an urgency. And the reason, you take a look at the number of bills that we have going forward, addressing as far as dealing with taxes, the number of bills going forward with additional funding. You take a look at the targets that were set, and it doesn't properly fund this initiative and this campaign. And like I said yesterday, with a friend from the other side of the aisle there, from Coon Rapids, we stand with you. And we had all but, 10 people that supported us on that motion yesterday. We need to do this. And this is the time to do it, right here and right now. And think about this. Think about this, members. When we go back home and we're accused of just carrying the party of water, towing the line, not bucking leadership at any point in time, this is our option, right here, to do the right thing. And so I tell you, you can stand shoulder to shoulder with, on a bipartisan measure, Democrats, Republicans, right here, right now, to do what's right. Every single one of us will stay here and say that we need to take care of the most vulnerable. Every single one of us. You take a look at the number of people that signed on to the representative from Coon Rapids bill, and it's huge bipartisan support. We have the chance right here, right now, to do the right thing, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Representative Hamilton, we've had the chance to do the right thing for years for this community. And let me just let's just walk down memory lane for a little bit, members. In 2011, from the shutdown, there were cuts to long-term care by the majority Republican Party. Provider rates were reduced by 1.5% in fiscal year 12-13 to the tune of about $45.7 million. They were also, fiscal year 13, a 1.67 long-term care rate reduction because Minnesota did not receive a federal waiver. And in 2013, members, we reversed that. The DFL reversed that. It was customized living services that were reduced in 2011 by 5% when the Republican majority were in majority by $16 million. Corporate foster care rates were reduced for low-need residents, $1.3 million. One of the things that really was significant in my district, personal care attendants, if they were relatives, their rates were reduced by 20% when the personal care attendants was a parent, a sibling over 16, an adult child, or a grandchild. That reduction was $24 million. That actually was overturned by the courts. Waiver limits were imposed on populations with significant disabilities, $48 million cut. rebasing was eliminated. Then in 2012, the majority party delayed the GOP delayed the 1.67 rate cut by 1 year, which in 2013 we, the DFL majority,
when reporting the bill, that's the
restricted. We turned it over in 2013. Members,
they haven't reported the bill.
last year, rate increases for nursing homes went up by 5%. We did that last year as part of our budget bill. And we also increased long-term care investments by 1%, $26 million. The way we did that, members, last year was by raising some revenue. We actually used all tools in the toolbox to balance the budget. Cuts, reform, redesign, revenue. And when we did that, we saw what we could invest in. And so, members, even this year, the minimum wage related increase for nursing homes is a proposal. There's a 4 to 5% increase for long-term care as a proposal in this year. And members, I say that because, if we do what Representative Hamilton wants us to do right now, that proposal won't have public information as it goes through the committee process. It won't be fully vetted. And I hear from both sides of the aisle those two things continually. Make sure that our legislation is publicly included with information from our public, that it's vetted throughout the process. So members, let's make sure that we are doing the correct thing in getting the bill. And yes, Representative Hamilton, there are a lot of us that are on that bill. It's a good bill. It's the right thing to do. But let's make sure we're doing it right. Matter of fact, that bill has multiple clones on it because there's so many members on it that want to get on it, both from the Senate and the House side. But members, let's ensure that we're doing it right. These are proposals, and proposals need to work through the committee process. So I would ask you, members, to vote red on the suspension of the rules.
Representative Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I also encourage you to vote red on this. Let's go through the process. I have spoken with the author in the Senate. He's assured me that the Senate is going to have the money so that we can come up with the full 5%. I've been assured by the House that we're going to do everything we can to make sure we have the full 5%. And I think we have to go through the committee process. And as Representative Ward said, we want to make sure that the public also has a chance to weigh in on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, members, I hear a lot of going back and forth about the past. But this is about the present and the future and what's deserving and what's needed and what's apparently the vast majority of us are for. So I guess I'm for, instead of dilly-dallying, going ahead and taking care of this. So I would say let's suspend. Let's do what we did the first day and take care of something that needs to be taken care of.
Representative Abler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And every day we can talk about more human service matters on the floor. I rejoice. This is we touch about 1 million people's lives in this area, Mr. Speaker, and I know you know that. And you and I have worked together to solving all kinds of these challenges. And Minnesota is a state to be proud of, the way we look after our disabled and our seniors and those who have found themselves in harm's way and had a brain injury and some tragedy. And Mr. Speaker, this is the midpoint of session. We're kind of like getting to the deadlines, and now it's time, like I said yesterday, was it just yesterday we had this conversation? That here comes a tax bill from the Senate, they're going to make us do their tax bill, and I actually kind of like part of the House tax bill, and so I'd like us to be helping them take part of our leadership. And I think that there is a risk that the Senate's not going to put the money up. And I think that we want to show that we as a House care about this. Mr. Speaker, we're here anyway. We came expecting to do a tax bill today. They couldn't quite pull it together over in the Senate and decide that they were going to organize themselves to recognize the governor's need to get this tax bill going and get people their tax savings. The House acted so rapidly, showed leadership. They did all this conforming, and And I talked to my accountant just a couple days ago. He says, what, they're going to pass a bill that late? Yeah, thank the Senate for that, you know. The House was here trying to get the tax stuff done and showing leadership because we're the House, because we understand the people, we're close to them. We understand the needs of this group as well. And so these people that serve these disabled individuals and those with brain injuries and our seniors are really hoping to get some activity out of us. They hope that we're going to recognize their value in our healthcare system, the 100,000, 200,000 people that they touch every day in ways that are inconvenient and 24/7, and maybe saving a life and helping them have a better life and adopting them into their virtual families of the care team, or really inspire me. And I think it would be nothing better than for the House to say, look, we are behind you. The governor, 4%. Really, Governor? 4% for these people. We heard yesterday that 4 is not 5. But the governor at 4%, it's a nice gesture. But Governor, we want to say 5. Senator Bach, Senator Lori, to the finance team, Senator Cohen was here. You know, we're going to tell you we actually want to make sure we give these people the respect that we all agree, that 83 of us said, let's give them the full 5%. And we can do it today, Mr. Speaker. We can send a message over there right now, suspend the rules, and because the rules are suspended, I presume the target would be automatically adjusted to accommodate this. And so we can make a difference today, Mr. Speaker. And so, members, today is our day. A lot of you ran on, we're going to work across the aisle. We're going to get things done. We're going to cut through the gridlock. We're going to cut through all the partisan rancor and all the foolishness that goes on there. I've traveled all around Minnesota. You know what the people want? They want us to stop fighting and get things done. They want us to do what we said we would do and look after the most vulnerable, deal with our seniors, the disabled. This is our day. This is our time, Mr. Speaker. We can lead. I'm having a lot of fun, but this is... But I'm so happy that we as a House and as a body are all paying attention to this most critical of all the issues of this session, to make sure we can stabilize this part of our human services system and keep these individuals who are leaving to take jobs across town because they know there's no future, that we can help them stay stable and serve these most vulnerable clients. Mr. Speaker, I hope you tell your people, I believe that's what we should do. So I'm waiting for you to lead the way with us. I'm helping you. We're all going to come with you for this 5% today. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Carlson.
Mr. Speaker, members, I'm not sure I would call this a fun debate. This is a very serious issue, and you know, the people that perform these duties do an excellent job, and I think we should all thank them. But we do have a process that we do go through. And yes, one of the roles of the Ways and Means Committee is to set targets, and we set them the other day. But more importantly, right now with the bill that's before us, if you take a look at the bill, page 6, it's a blank appropriation. There's not even an appropriation in it. Well, that's not being fiscally responsible. And when bills are reported by the fiscal committees and by the Ways and Means Committee, we have a fiscal note attached to them so that we know what the specific costs of a given piece of legislation is. So I would say vote against this so we can be fiscally responsible and do what Representative Ward and Representative Newton pointed out. We have a process in place. Until yesterday, the bill was before Representative Huntley's Health and Human Services Finance Committee. They will still be working on this issue in the days ahead. Even though the bill is no longer in their possession, I would say the issue is in their possession. But let's be a body that's fiscally responsible and not move bills forward that don't even have an appropriation in them.
Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And when we're successful on passing this bill, that's my first amendment, is putting a dollar amount in there so that we are fiscally responsible. And I tell you what, friends, over there, you're being sold a bill of goods because the targets have already been set by your leadership. And there's not enough money to properly fund this in the budget. So they can sit here and tell you whatever they want, but there's not the dollars available. Here's your opportunity. Here's your opportunity to stand up to leadership and say it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. I'm getting worked up again. See my legs jumping? It's absolutely wrong. So we do this. Right now, we have a handful of the members that I respect that sit on the Ways and Means Committee telling the rest of us what we're able to spend dollars on. And the dollar amount that they gave us to spend on this, it's not enough. So they say we'll send it back and we'll run it through the process and we'll properly vet this. But the thing is, the dollars aren't there to properly fund this. So we as a body can weigh in on this right now to do what's right and to fully vet this. Was everybody sleeping when we had 1,000 people out in the rotunda? People with disabilities that came up here with the signs, that came up here, took all their time to share with us their stories and the reason why we should support this. You know what? We cannot sell out. We have to do this. This is the only way we're going to get this accomplished. I hope that you reconsider over there, my friends. Just look at the budget target. Look at the target. There's not enough dollars available in the target, but there is enough dollars available on the bottom line. So please reconsider your position on this. Let's go back to the original vote yesterday. Let's go back to everybody that signed on to it, including the chair of Health and Human Services Policy and Finance, and let's do the right thing here and support the people who not only are disabled, but the wonderful people who are caring for them. We have the opportunity to do what's right. Let's vote green. Thank you.
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this is flashing back here. Listen to this a couple days ago or yesterday. I mean, it's kind of running together, right? But as busy as we all are, but you know, there's a process, and I heard on some of the last motions that we were talking about with the previous bill. Let's do the process. I heard that quite distinctly. I think it was Representative Pepin. So sometimes we do process, sometimes we don't. But we've got a process. Let's put it together. Let's do it. We can do it right. And opportunity, Representative Abler, Representative Quam, we had opportunity. Representative Hamilton, we had opportunity. 2011 was your opportunity. You punted. You punted. And to use Representative Dean's analogy the other day talking about going to school, you didn't do 0.5%. You didn't do 1%. You didn't do 2%. You punted. You didn't do nothing. So we're going to do it right. We're going to go through committee. We're going to get those folks all the wage that they need. But by golly, we need to do the process right. There's no emergency here. There's no urgency here. The urgency was years ago, as Representative Ward said. Years ago. We've been going through this for years. How many sessions? And here we sit today. Urgency. Yeah, right.
Representative Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just a couple of points. Representative Purcell, I would take issue. I do think people outside of this room do think that this is an urgent issue, and I know that many of the folks that I've talked to, the homes I've toured since last fall, are desperate for this and want it done sooner than later. And members, to Representative Ward's point, I do think the history of this is important, and you do raise some good points. And I think if some of us could go back, we might do things a little bit differently. But I would also say that there's an important point that hasn't been mentioned here today, is that when we look back at 2011, it was very different than what we've had last year and this year. What members conveniently forget is that we came in with a $6 billion deficit that we had to fix, members. A $6 billion deficit. And Representative Abler had to make some extremely difficult choices, as well as the members of the Health and Human Services Finance Committee and the Ways and Means Committee. And you might disagree with the decisions that were made, but you can't deny the facts that there was a $6 billion deficit that we had to fix, and we prioritized as best we could. Now compare that to last year, members. You raised revenue. That was your choice. You decided to raise taxes on every Minnesotan to pay for priorities that you saw fit. But members, after a $3 billion tax increase on all Minnesotans, it was a pitiful outcome for the disability community. And they've told me that. How disappointed they were. How high their hopes were on election night when Democrats took the House, the Senate, and the governor's office because they thought surely now we'll get the increases that we need. And how disappointed they've been ever since, and how pitiful the outcome was last session. $3 billion in tax increases and a pitiful outcome for the disability community, members. And so I'm standing here today wishing that maybe we would have done things different in the past 6 years. Certainly wishing we would have done things different in the last 12 months. But this is our chance now, members. Representative Hamilton's absolutely right. There is enough money on the bottom line, but your leadership has set priorities. So this is your chance to send a new message to the disability community. I've sat in the room in the last couple months with many members from my county at hearings that the disability communities have put on, where we've gotten to hear the stories of people that work in these homes. And I sat there, I think I was one of 2 Republicans at the table at those meetings of folks in Dakota County. And I heard many promises made in that room from my fellow representatives that they would stand up for 5% and not a percentage less. And so I'm asking those representatives who I heard made that promise in that room in Egan back in January, in that room in Rosemont back in February, when they made that promise that said we'll stand up for this 5%, I hope you remember the promise you made less than 3 months ago, members, because you owe it to these folks. And I think today's the day to send the message. It has been through the process, members. We have had plenty of public input, and everybody in this room agrees it needs to be 5%. The names on the bills, the votes that have been taken, prove that's the case. So, members, please, let's do the right thing today and pass this.
Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I take my job very seriously. And this summer, many of my disability community folks asked me to come visit their homes and get to know the residents. And that's what I did. Senator Ingebretson and I went to numerous homes and spoke to numerous residents as well as their workers. And I got to know them. I got to know a couple of them very well, Danica especially. And Danica lives in a home. She also works part-time at a Dairy Queen. And she does what she can, and she loves the people who care for her. The people who live at these homes love their care workers. They're like family. And so when I was at their home talking to them, getting to know why this 5% was so vital, it was because they want to keep those caregivers working for them. They want stability. They don't want to have to worry about their caregiver finding a job elsewhere that pays more for them, because it's about stability. And so, Representative Purcell, I take great offense at the fact that you don't believe that this issue is an emergency. This is an emergency to the workers. This is an emergency to those caregivers. This is an emergency to those who receive care. I don't believe that our voting populace truly cares about the history behind this 5% campaign. They don't care about finger pointing and Republicans cutting this and Republicans cutting that because we were trying to balance a $6 billion deficit. But what they do know is that Democrats raised over $2 billion taxes last year, over $2 billion. And now, once again, this population of people are being treated like second-class people. They realize this is happening. And I believe that hurts them, that once again they are left as an afterthought. 5 doesn't mean 5, because under the Democrat math now, 3 equals 5, 4 could equal 5. But I took up Representative Dean's little challenge yesterday when he said, ask a 3-year-old, does 3 mean 5? And the preschooler will say no. So there was a little 3-year-old or 2-year-old walking around the second floor yesterday in the state office building. So I asked this child, I believe it was Representative Swedinsky's child, I said, so, I held up 3 fingers. I said, is this 5? The child shakes her head and says no. I put up 4 fingers. I said, well, am I holding up 5 fingers? The child shook her head and she said no, and I put up 5 fingers. Is this 5? And she looked at me with a smile on her face and said yes. And I believe she probably thought, why am I being asked these silly questions? But I do believe that the disability community is going to believe that it is silly that we're even contemplating giving them less than 5%. In fact, they actually deserve more. Let's be honest, they deserve more. But come on, let's suspend the rules, take up this matter, because they are counting on us to do the people's work. Thank you.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Representative Purcell, Representative Ward, a few others of you mentioned today that this bill needs to go through the process. This bill needs to go through the process. We need to make sure that it's fully vetted, that we haven't had public participation in this bill or around this subject matter. I've had people in my office, the public has been talking about this for years. We have 70 co-authors on this legislation. This bill has been publicly vetted. It has been through the process. And you know what, members? This bill is on the General Register. We did it yesterday. I know things are running together. There's a lot going on around here on policy deadline time. This bill's sitting on the General Register. We did it yesterday. All but 10 members voted to put this on the General Register because we precisely said that this is an urgent matter, that these folks deserve this attention, and that it needs to be voted up or down by this body. So consider this carefully, members. It's gone through the process. It's been vetted. It's sitting on the General Register. The appropriate place means it's moved through the process and is ready for this body to deal with and answer. So the question today is, members, is everything that you've been saying up to this point, are you going to be a member of your word and back it up and support these folks?
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Don't really want to get up twice on this, but you know, selective memory can be a wonderful thing, I expect. But you're looking for an urgency here, and you had opportunity a number of times, and we're talking about folks that are near and dear to all of our hearts, those who care for some of the most vulnerable, and talk about going and visiting with folks last year. This has been going on for years, for a decade probably. I've been hearing about it in my district. So, an urgency to do this at this time when we have it going through the process and we're close to having a bill before us that has been through the process, I just don't quite understand. I do understand what's going on, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to make accusations here, but I'm curious. I'm looking across the way, and do I see any of those give it back pins on? I don't think so. I don't think so. Representative Verdon? No? Oh, okay. So, where's the give it back now? There's a word that goes with this stuff sometimes. It's called hypocrisy. I've said that before on the floor, and it's one of the worst words that can be said. Now, doggone it, we're working on this. Let's make it work together. We all want this. This is nothing but trying to put something up in front of us that we're already working on and is going to come back to us. And we're going to get the funding for it. So work with us. You're holding up processes. We could be over working in committee right now, eh? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Ward, Representative Purcell, when you look at history and you say, you did this, you did that, well, I tell you what, I wasn't there then, but I'm here now. And I'm here to make a difference. I'm not going to live in the past and point fingers and say you did this, you did that. We got a future to look forward to. And that's what they sent us down here for, is to look for the future and give them a brighter future. Why not do it now? I've heard this all through the interim session. When I was out doing my meetings, we heard this from our communities. They want this. It's going on the General Register. Let's get it done. We're here. We're here to tomorrow the way it sounds. Let's vote on this and get it done. Let's have a good future, and let's start with this tomorrow. Thank you, members.
Representative Leidiger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't going to speak on this. I think my colleagues pretty much made the case for this, that we need to pass this and pass this now. This is our opportunity. And I listened to you, Representative Purcell, and all I hear is, yeah, we should be taking care of this business right now, because there has been history where it hasn't been taken care of. Well, the real reason, I'm standing now is I did have people come in from this community, and they're sitting in front of me and they're telling me what has happened in the history of this issue. And when they sit there and tell me, look, we know we have a surplus right now. It wasn't like it was 4 years ago when we were coming into this body and we were trying to wrestle with that $6 billion deficit. We have a surplus right now. And these children and the disabled, they understand that. They understand there is the money, and they understand that this is time that we should be taking care of this business. So we're here now. The issue is before us. Let's get it done.
Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Purcell, I do appreciate the history lesson, particularly from northern Minnesota. You always do it in a way that is very entertaining, and I enjoy it. But there's also a little bit of history that you might have left out. We did have to balance a $6 billion budget deficit, but the governor also had to put forward a budget in that year. That included $3.7 billion in tax increases, $700 million in surcharges, and a 4% cut to the very people that we're trying to help here today. You raised taxes this year over $2 billion. $2 billion in new taxes, not in a time when we're trying to balance a troublesome economy with growing deficits. We've got money that is growing with a growing and recovering economy that we're kicking in the ribs with $2 billion in new taxes. After extracting that money, you can fund things from one end of this state to the other, and we've seen them clogging up the committees with different ideas to spend money hand over fist. And we don't have the priorities in place to fund 5. 5 means 5.
Representative Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to get a handle on kind of what we're looking at here, I'm representing if Representative Purcell would yield for a question.
He will yield. Representative Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Purcell, just to kind of follow up on your line of what you were speaking about and the details of this, can you remind us, do you know what it would cost to fund it at the full 5%?
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Mack. I believe that's 79 plus some change, close to 80 million.
Representative Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Purcell, if you'd yield for just another question quick.
He will yield. Representative Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Purcell, I'm trying to remember, what is and I honestly can't remember what the target is in the HHS, for the HHS target. Do you know what that target number is?
79? 85. 75, yeah. 75.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Mack, it's 75 million.
Representative Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I didn't hear, did you say, I'm sorry, Representative Purcell, did you say 71?
I believe I said 75. Like this.
Representative Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you for the hand gesture to clarify, Representative Purcell. Members, again, I think we can probably move on here soon from this and just go to the vote. But again, the problem is in the targets, members. I know that we can continue through the process as has been asked to do. Let this go through the process, get more public input. But I think the case has been made that's not necessary. What's necessary is new and better budget targets, and to send a message that right now the math is not working out. And that's not a real promising picture for the disability community and the people that we made promises to over the past year. And so, members, if you write those numbers down, realize that the math doesn't work out. No matter how much more of a process this goes through, without new budget targets, the math doesn't work. And that's very disappointing for the disability community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Representative Purcell, one more question that could be asked, and that was how much did it cost for the Senate office building with the reflecting pool that you voted for last session? $90 million. And you don't need to yield, Representative Purcell. We know the number. $90 million that it cost for the Senate office building with the reflecting pool and the other goodies that we don't even need. There's plenty of housing for the legislature in the configuration we have here now. And this legislature, led by Minnesota Democrats and Governor Dayton, enacted into law the largest spending increase on an all-funds basis in the history of the state of Minnesota. And we fail to have the discipline to set the priorities. The Democrats fail to have the discipline to set the priorities properly. 5% brings us back to setting those priorities. And members, it's time to redirect our efforts towards those priorities, the ones that you failed in last year's bill to address properly. We taxed the pants off of Minnesotans. Democrats taxed the pants off of Minnesotans. Collected $2.4 billion in fees and taxes. $450 for every man, woman, and child in Minnesota. And you couldn't spend it properly on the priorities that we know are the priorities of Minnesotans. Members, don't tell us that we can't suggest that this $1.2 billion surplus needs to be given back to Minnesotans. The Democrats increased spending by $3 billion last year and failed to include this in their priority. Members, it's time. It's time for even Minnesota Democrats to realize the priorities of Minnesota are the priorities that we need to set here in the legislature. And now is the time. As Representative Dean said, 5 means 5. Thank you, members.
Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And like I said multiple times here, you want to take a trip down memory lane, there's enough blame to go all the way around. And Representative Ward, you and I agree on more than we disagree. And I would say, and I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but I would say that, you know what, we agree on this issue as well. And you know what, let's take a trip down memory lane. And it happens immediately when the Speaker closes this board. Did we vote green and support people with disabilities, or did we not? That's your trip down memory lane. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the motion. The clerk will close the roll. Erickson votes aye. There being 71 ayes and 51 nays, the motion does not prevail.
Clark moves that House File 2878 be recalled from the Committee on Civil Law and re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services Finance.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill deals with the cancer registry, and we are moving it from civil law over to Health and Human Services Finance. We will be putting the warning that we want to have in it at a later time. I talked with both authors of both chairs of the committees and with Representative Holberg, who's kind of my expert on this, and they're all okay with it. Appreciate your support.
Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Announcements. Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Environment Committee will meet at 20 of 5 in room 5. Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Finance.
Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Jobs Committee will meet at 5:15, 515 in room 200.
Representative Lesh.
Mr. Speaker, members of the Civil Law Committee will be meeting at 9 bells tomorrow morning. Representative Paymar is going to bring some of those donuts with little sprinkles on them.
Representative Paymar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I will not. The Public Safety Committee will meet at 4:45 in the basement this evening.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, the Government Operations Committee will be meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And Representative Paymar is bringing sprinkles for us too? No. No. We're meeting at 9 a.m.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12 noon, Friday, March 21st, 2014.
Representative Murphy moves that when the House adjourned today, it'll adjourn until 12 noon, Friday, March 25th, 2014. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Murphy, will she yield for a question?
She will yield, yes. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Majority Leader, would you mind just walking us through what your plan is for the House tomorrow?
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. We'll come in at noon, recess, likely caucus, and then when we finally do get the tax bill from the Senate, and I think we'll get it sometime tomorrow, we will break so that everyone has a chance to review it, and then we'll come in and take it up.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will she yield again?
She will yield. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it your intention then that we will wait as long as it takes to take up the tax bill tomorrow, or is there some sort of cutoff time? Just looking for a little more direction.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Sanders. You know, we passed that, this House passed that tax bill, it seems like 4 weeks ago. Making the commitment to middle-class Minnesotans that we would deliver tax cuts. And I know that Governor Dayton is anxiously awaiting the bill on his desk. So it is my hope that we get it tomorrow, we can take it up and pass it and send it on its way. I know that that is open-ended because we're not exactly sure when the Senate's going to take action, but we expect that they're coming in tomorrow at 9:30. We'll take it up. What I do know, I talked with the Minority Leader, with Representative Doubt, and he's asked for some time to review the bill, and we talked about a specific amount of time, and certainly we want to do that so everybody's prepared. But it is my intention, yes, that we take it up tomorrow, and we can stay in touch if something changes.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon, Friday, March 25th, 2014.